A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a Directors Club webinar. My name's John Snow, and this is a new thinking webinar, part of a series of knowledge share sessions that we hold throughout the year. And today's knowledge share session is supported by Kura. Just to give you a bit of background about Directors Club before we start, we originated as the Directors Dining Club, based at Claridge's Hotel in Mayfair, where about once a quarter we bring together business leaders of the day to talk about disruptive forces for change within their markets. Now, under pressure from our members to do other things at other times, not just dinners, we reconstitute ourselves in 2010 to become the Directors Club United Kingdom, but our mission has pretty much stayed the same, and that is to facilitate knowledge learning and knowledge share and networking across a broad church of customer-centric professions. So today, our membership comes together to meet, share knowledge and experiences, and get to know each other and network during breakfasts, lunches, dinners, webinars such as this, some small-scale conferencing, and our newly introduced for 2017 UK National Innovation Awards series. Now, our agenda for this webinar, it's titled The People Factor, Understanding the Future Nature of Work in Customer Service. And we've got a presentation which is going to be co-presented by Mike Havard of Ember Group and Arceeb Moughal of Kura. After the formal presentation, we're going to have about 15 minutes or so of Q&A where we can respond to your questions, the audience questions. Now, you can ask questions at any time during the whole webinar. So during the presentation, if something jumps to mind, go on the question function on your control panel and put in your question. It can be short, it can be long and complex, whatever you like. Pop in your question. Please don't use the chat function because your question won't make it to us. Then during that Q&A session, we will answer as many questions as possible. And if we don't get to your question, then either Mike or Arceeb will respond to you directly post the event. So without further ado, on with the show. The People Factor, Understanding the Future Nature of Work in Customer Service. And I'd like to, first of all, welcome both Arceeb and Mike.
Thank you, John, and hello, everybody. Delighted to be on this virtual event. I wasn't aware, John, that Claridge's might have been an option. I think that feels certainly a better option than where I'm sitting right now, but delighted to be on this. And thank you to Kura for sponsoring our initial piece of work and for initiating this webinar with you.
Excellent, and welcome Arceeb as well.
Hi, John. How are everybody? Yeah, it's great to be here today. We've got Mike to support us on the piece of work that we commissioned, so great to be here.
Good stuff. So I'm going to hand over to, I think, you, Mike, first. So let me mute myself. So I'll just mute myself before you begin. And then if there's any problems, just give me a shout and I'll jump back in.
Thank you, John. Let me sort of crack straight on because there's a lot of material here, and the intention is not to repeat the content of the white paper that we produced with Kura. It's more to give additional context and further thinking to that piece of work, and it's about trying to find the hard evidence for this people focus, for this soft focus. For those of you that aren't aware of myself or Ember, just very quickly, I've been involved in the customer management and service world for about 30 years, many of those as a practitioner, as an HR director running operations. So, you know, and so very much are looking at this as hopefully you are as well, which is, what does this really mean and what should I really be doing about the changing nature of work in my service environment? Ember more generally is a professional services group that has a consulting business, a training business, a recruitment business, and a fully regulated law firm advising on contractual and technology matters. And therefore the people element is a really important priority for us to understand and help our clients, major name brands around the world, deliver better service. And clearly a big component is around technology and digital and what's happening in that space. But also, I think a really important piece of what we do is helping them understand what this means for the people component of their service delivery and helping them do the right thing. The agenda that I've got is really just touching on some market themes, so we have some context to this focus on the people dimension, and a little bit about value and understanding where the value resides, which I think is a really important part to ensuring that our clients and those that we advise know how to get the investment that they need. And what that then means for frontline skills and what might need to change in your thinking and in the actual service delivery. And just conclude with something that we call the North Star opportunity, which I'll explain in about 15 or 20 minutes or so. So without further ado, just touching on the market themes that we see, just trying to put some context to where people fit within the service delivery environment. The first is, and hopefully this is familiar territory to a lot of you listening on this, is what we're seeing in the world of collaboration, how customers and communities are better connected. And this isn't just about social media, it's about using different channels that go around the organization rather than into it. So we're seeing really interesting technology and platforms that are about connecting customers together to service each other's queries and questions without relying upon the organization themselves. We're seeing the likes of TripAdvisor and that model move into many other parts of enterprise and service delivery, so that organizations are having to better connect not just themselves with their customers through a range of emerging channels, but customers with customers, but also employees with employees. How are we creating a knowledge economy within our company? The second big theme, and this is talked about by a lot of organizations, there's certainly a great deal of hype around this area, is the rise of the machine, and whether we will use, need, love, whatever the appropriate term is, robots, machines, artificial intelligence. And the reality here is that this stuff has been around for a long time. We used to call it workflow automation or process automation and other such things. So it's not a big new thing. What is new is the ability for machines to learn and develop themselves and create this intelligence off of its own actions. So there's some really interesting developments in this space, and clearly it's proving to be potentially quite transformational for certainly some of our clients and others in the market more generally. But there's a lot of, I think, misrepresented perspective and opinion given about this being the death of the contact center and the death of the human agent, and we completely disagree with that perspective, and I'll start to explain why in a moment. The third theme is around changing models of operation. When you've got collaboration going on, you've got AI and robotics going on, you start to have to think differently about the way you run and manage your service delivery. And what does things like Internet of Things mean for your business? What does really quite transformed customer journeys mean for the way that you have your organizations designed within the business and the way that you set out to manage customer promises? So some big changes, some big questions being asked by our clients there. And the fourth is around fraud and compliance, and not just how we manage the regulatory obligations, but how we ensure that we as brands manage the trust that our consumers put in us and how we protect our brands reputationally through challenging times. And we've seen lots of, to a degree, increasing evidence why this is a huge issue for organizations. In a poll I did last year for about 300 contact center and service directors and managers, this came out as the single most important theme that they're challenged with and faced with in the market right now around fraud and compliance. requirements. This is all in the context of volumes decreasing, but the actual workload increasing. This is why we're not seeing a reduction in the number of people yet being employed in service environments. In fact, the market data is that the number of people is increasing because the complexity, the workload is going up. It's not about volumes because of the easier, more simple transactions being moved into a digital or self-serve environment. So all of that, if you add it together, really does have, I think, some quite profound implications for frontline support staff, and it should have some big implications for your strategies and your operating model. And I came across this cartoon, which sort of, I think, gives a sense of the pace of change that we're, as managers, having to face. And if you can't read the writing, it's saying my profession has probably transformed again just since we started this session. It is really quite unprecedented in terms of what operations directors and technology leaders and transformation individuals are having to deal with within the service environment. And hopefully we can start to give some guidance as to what they need to be thinking about and prioritizing over the coming months and years. But a starting point to all of this is, it's all theory unless you can actually get the money to do what you need to do. And there was a survey at the end of last year in Call Centre Helper that found that over half of business managers don't get the investment they think they need to effectively manage their customers. And there's lots of reasons why that might be the case, but I think the principal reason is it's not talking the language of the board in terms of value, so that you are easily justifying their support, their investment, their funds versus a range of other priorities that they might have. So how do we bring the question of value to the board? And it's about understanding, I think, the different perspectives. It's not just about wallowing in our consumer issues where they're saying, I just want you to do what I want you to do, or help me, whatever that consumer or customer's question is. It's about recognizing that the board need to be convinced, and there is a set of language, a set of expectations that they need to be communicated with. And I think there is a failing on the part of a lot of operations managers who need the investment to not actually be persuasive enough at board level, not use the right language. And there's a white paper that, in fact, Ember just produced a couple of weeks ago that's on our website that talks around this. But it's also recognizing there are other stakeholders. It's not just the board themselves. There may be shareholders or trustees or others that need to be convinced of these priorities too, and you have to play to their agenda, so that the operations person, the one who's struggling with these increasing difficulties, backlogs of complaints, poor service levels, etc., gets the help and the funding that they need. Otherwise, as I say, it's all academic, and we can just look at the data and worry about it rather than doing something practically about it. So this is about doing the right thing for the customer, but understanding the value of that. So if I improve my service levels, what does that actually mean in terms of P&L impact or balance sheet impact for the business, or does it remove risk from my business or my brand? And these are really important numerical and economic questions to understand. But there isn't a specific place on a service spectrum to be. This is not an absolute question. This is about a range of options. And just to give you an example, the Institute of Customer Service do some work quite regularly, which I think is great work, looking at the difference in top line earnings between the bottom performers on their customer satisfaction index and their top performers. And what this chart shows is that there is a 2.3% difference between the top and the bottom. Now that's 2.3% on the revenue line for those who are offering top decile service performance. So there is hard financial value in offering good customer service. So the question is, how do we take that sort of data and position it to the board to say, this is why you need to invest in the digital technology I need, or the service transformation budget that I need? However, this isn't just about saying we need to be excellent at service, because there's room for others. And I just use Ryanair as an example to say, I'm not going to have an argument with Michael O'Leary that he's got it wrong in terms of their service delivery. I think they're about the world's third most profitable airline, but they're very clear on their service proposition. You know what you're going to get. It may not be brilliant, but it will be functional, and it will be appropriate to the price point and to the brand promise that they set out. So my point here is, don't set out to be excellent, just set out to be where you need to be, where the right part for your business, the right position for your business is on that spectrum from functional through to excellent. Clearly, overpaying for excellence is bad maths, and being less than functional is clearly bad maths. But there is a right place to be. And how you understand this and apply this to your business in a very practical sense is to understand the value of the demand that you get right now. And the one way of looking at this that we use with a lot of our clients is the customer demand value model, where we have a dimension that says this contact that is coming in, whether it's via email or phone call or into our online environments and application environments, is it valuable to the customer, or is it irritating and annoying to the customer? And is it valuable to the organization, or is it irritable and annoying and costly to the organization? And this creates 4 very clear strategies. One is that if it's annoying to both the customer and the organization, then there's a very clear strategy of, well, let's eliminate this data, this demand, and it might be billing errors. Clearly, it's about affecting upstream and downstream issues so that you are continually improving your processes and your models so that you're taking this demand out. Often harder said than done, but it is about the role of the service environment having an impact further upstream and affecting different parts of the organization. When it's valuable to the customer but irritating to the organization, it's saying, well, look, this is right for self-service, and let's create a digital by default strategy and think about all of the different innovative technologies and tools that we can use to let the customer help themselves. If it's valuable to the organization but slightly annoying or irritating to the customer, then we've just got to simplify that process and make it easy. And we know that we're going to have to get the customer to deal with this in some way. Let's be as less of an intrusion on their time as possible. And here's the really interesting area to say, look, if this contact is valuable to the customer to have and it's valuable to us to have, it might be supporting them through a sales process or emotionally supporting them through a very difficult time personally, then it's about providing the right level of resource and the right level of skills. And this is really the opportunity in terms of value growth for the company. How do we focus our budget and our investment and our ability to do the right thing on where the resource and the skills are needed to drive value into our customer management? And so this, if you add all of that together, has really quite tangible implications for skills at the front line. And we're moving away from in 2010, for example, where the role of the frontline agent was classified by the UK Standard Occupational Classification as a low-skilled menial job. I mean, it was really quite denigrating to the people that do this. And I think we're now having to wake up to say it's not just about transactional management. There are a whole range of skills that are really going to be challenging us as business to find these people, train these people, energize them to keep doing this job long term, and to ensure that we're continually learning and building capability and value. And not to run through this list, but just to say, the tasks therefore in that top quadrant are going to be much more complex in the future. We're going to need our staff to be imaginative and creative when dealing with customers, because the stuff that can be codified will be dealt with by the technology and by digital channels. We're going to need the vulnerable in our communities looked after with conscience, and that's something that machines don't tend to have. We're going to have an appreciation of nuance where people perhaps don't quite understand their problem or can't articulate their problem. So how do we help them bring out the true issues so that we can add value through that conversation? So, empathy and ability of that frontline advisor to manage a multiple channel situation, to be persuasive, to negotiate, to be a translator between the customer and different parts of the business, I think is a really important set of skills. And we're going to have to then think really hard about what this means for the management. But before I get onto that question of what this means for the leadership, we've got a poll just to get you involved in this and ask, are you seeing your frontline staff needing to adapt their role and approach to suit changing customer demand and changing customer questions? So John, would you set us up for the poll, please?
Yeah, Mike, I've got the polling open. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can choose the one of the four answers to the polling question. So, are you seeing your frontline staff needing to adapt their role and approach to suit changing customer demand and questions? Customer demand and customer questions. Select one of the following: not at all, slightly, yes, somewhat, yes, significantly, yes. There we go. Right. I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds. I'm just looking, and I think we've got 80% voted. So if you're one of the 20%, got a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to share the results. And Mike, can you see the results on your screen?
I can, John. Thank you. Yeah, and look, really interesting. So, first of all, a huge comfort that what I'm saying is not nonsense to everybody. That is very comforting. So, the fact that nobody is not seeing a change is certainly interesting in its own right. We are all seeing the need for our frontline staff to change in some form, and the fact that the vast majority are somewhat or significantly. So we add the somewhat or significantly together, and essentially it's 90%. I mean, that is, proof that we are seeing these changes, and the obvious question is, what do we then do about it, or what are we doing about it? So perhaps also, if I can just make an offer that within the questions that you might be posing, if you've got some thoughts or ideas or examples of what you've done to change things, then certainly put a note there, and that would be really interesting to get some feedback on as well. Good. So I'll just get back to the presentation.
Yeah, I'll hide the results, Mike, and we'll go back to there, and I'll just check that I'm showing the screen. Yep, there we go, Mike. Back with you. Oh,
Thank you.
I'll just mute.
Thank you, John. So if I therefore move on and say, what does this mean for the leaders within these operations then? Because clearly they are a significant array of new and emerging skills for the new world of work within our service environments. The first person that tried to get his head around this actually was back in the 90s, a guy called Tom Davenport, who wrote the book Thinking for a Living. And he had this model about HSPALTA, which actually stands for Hire Smart People and Leave Them Alone. Now, that's certainly one way of dealing with much more professional individuals who like autonomy, don't like to be governed, don't like to be constrained. But that isn't natural thinking in the world of service environments and contact center or back office operations. So we probably need to think a little more creatively beyond that. I think our understanding and ability to move beyond that has certainly evolved over the past few years. However, there is a degree of truth within it. The type of people we're now looking for are not the type of people that will perform optimally when constrained by very tight performance metrics and KPIs and second by second management. I think we need to some way let the shackles loose and have a lot more trust in these individuals' abilities and skills and professionalism. We need to think about how we reward them and how we recognize them. And again, just thinking about pay levels and where work in this environment tends to be positioned within an organization, certainly somewhere down near the lowest rung of the ladder. If we're expecting people to be emotionally competent and dealing with the most valuable contacts for our business, we need to think about, well, how do we suitably reward that, suitably recognize that, and incentivize people, and what are the metrics around value that makes that justifiable? If rather than saying what's the least that we can pay someone to get away with the business model we've got, what if we turned it around and said, how do I justify paying somebody £45,000, £50,000 a year to work on the front line? Is there a value metric that can justify that? And I think it may not mean you get there, but it certainly creates some very interesting discussions and arguments within the business. And what support and enabling systems do we need? So, for example, I think it's quite clear that we can't now know better than our frontline staff what training they need. I think we have to be thinking about creating learning management systems and technology that enables the staff to pull what they need at any point in time to answer customer queries or develop their own skills, rather than sitting back and waiting to be trained and supported and coached. So that's just one example of how we need to think differently about supporting these enabling systems. But it's also bringing in the longer term thinking, not just to the service environment, but to the business more generally. And I think Barclays Digital Eagles is a great example where they've taken a long-term view about, look, if we need to take transactional demand out of our contact centres and out of our service environments and away from our branches, and to do that, we need customers to be much more digitally savvy. Well, look, let's bring them into the branches and train our staff to help them be digitally savvy so that in the long term, they're better able to help themselves. And I think that's a really interesting initiative that takes a short-term hit to do the right thing for the longer term. And Predamonje, I think, is another organisation that's thought about this really hard in what is essentially a highly repetitive menial frontline environment, just serving coffee and food and taking payment. What they do is encourage their staff to give away coffee and occasionally food to people that the staff want to give it to and who make the staff feel happy. So if someone comes in looking smiling or comes in and it's an opportunity for the staff member to have a really positive engagement and feel good about giving coffee away rather than just taking the money, then they'll do that. And the business encourages that. And I think it's a really interesting model that we see really high levels of staff engagement and really positive advocation for working in prep for what is, actually a very difficult, highly repetitive job. So longer term thinking, I think, needs to feature on this. So the second poll, John, I'll hand back to you in a second, is how much is thinking about and managing the changing role of your frontline staff an important issue for right now? So we've seen that this is affecting 90% of organisations out there in a material way and 100% in some sort of way. The question is, are you actually having to think about and prioritise this, or is it just happening to you? So I'd be really interested in whether thinking about and managing the changing role of your frontline staff is not at all an issue for you, is of minimal importance, is somewhat important, or very important. So John, can I hand over to you to set the timer on that?
Yeah, we've opened the poll and let's have a look. 62% of you have already voted. So if you're one of the no voters, you see, I've got a spike already. So there we go. So we're up to 75%. Let's get it over 80% and then we can close the poll. So just a few more seconds, please. If you haven't voted, do so now. So just a reminder, it is how much is thinking about and managing the changing role of your frontline staff an important issue for you right now? Not at all, of minimal importance, somewhat important, or very important. Good. We've got 88% participation, so I'm going to close the poll now, and I'm going to share the results with you. So, Mike, I think again you're vindicated. Very important.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and not just ourselves, but Kura as well for getting involved in this debate. I would say it's probably self-selecting in that would you come and join this webinar if it wasn't relevant and important, but good to know that the majority of people are wanting to deal with this, and it is an issue, and hopefully there's some content both within the white paper and within this webinar that in some way might be helpful. And of course we're always keen to continue the discussion and the dialogue beyond these sorts of events. So thank you, John. I'll take back control just to finish off.
Let me just hide the results and make sure that I'm showing the screen. And just at this point, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got any questions, you can use the question function. But back to you, Mike, just after I mute myself. Oh, no.
Great. Thank you, John. So the final piece that I just wanted to touch on is through all of this, we believe in Ember, it's really important to have North Star thinking. And this is really coming back to this idea of how do you know that your organisation, your frontline staff and the leaders are doing the right thing? And this goes under many different names, within business. It could be a customer charter, it could be a service vision, whatever it is. the North Star is about guiding principles that just ensure the organization is aligned to a common customer focused purpose. There are so many different options, challenges, questions that our frontline staff are now having to face, some of them very complex. We cannot create processes and protocols for every single one, A, because they're changing daily, and B, is because our staff would just not keep up with that. So what we have to do is give them a framework by which they can make the decision about doing the right thing. And you might actually disagree as a manager or a leader with the specific action they took, and you can use that for coaching and for retraining, but you cannot fault the basis on which that decision was made. And I think it's really important that we empower our staff through frameworks and principles around how you want to be known for your service delivery, how you want to be recognized, what sort of promise you want to set out there, so that you can both be clear for your staff as to what you expect of them and they can do the right thing, but also that your customers understand the promise that's being made. So in Ember, we call that the North Star, and it's really about clear direction on policy and decisions and principles. The final thing, I'm sorry, but I should say there is a white paper available again from the Ember website that just touches on what finding your North Star means for your operation and your operating model. So look, the great news seeing those polls is that it doesn't feel like all of you listening to this webinar are in any way complacent. Things are changing, they're changing rapidly. Everyone's getting very excited by the technology, but I think we need to get equally excited by the opportunities for our staff, and it's why Ember invested in a training business last year, contrary to what a lot of people thought was the mood, and everything was moving to technology. We have a very strong focus on helping innovation and technology, but we equally balance that with a really strong view on the people dimension. So complacency isn't really an option, and there's a lovely quote from an unlikely source actually, which is this chap, which is a guy called Laird Hamilton, who's a pro surfer. He lives in Hawaii. He's famous for surfing these huge pipelines, and he has this lovely quote, which is when he's riding at speed down the beautiful blue wave under his surfboard, he's got a fantastic view of the palm trees and the golden sands of the Hawaiian beach. And what he says is, everything is okay. Everything is marvelous in that moment, as it might be for you in your business, in your sector. You're running good staff engagement, good customer satisfaction, good growth, but everything is okay until it isn't. And for a pro surfer riding an 80-foot wave, when it isn't okay, it really, really isn't okay. And I think we have the same challenge in our businesses, that looming up behind us, whichever sector we're in, whichever business, there is a huge wave at risk of crashing down on us. And we just have to be very nimble and agile on our surfboard to keep riding the blue water and have the good view of the beach in front of us. So at that point, thank you for listening. I'll hand over to Arceeb to provide Kura's perspective on this as well.
Thanks, Mike, for that. That was very interesting. I think very clear from the paper and things you went through there that absolutely the myth of the death of the contact center agent is a bit of a mythology rather than a reality. My name's Arceeb Moughal, and I'm the Director of Commercial at Kura. I've been in the outsourcing customer management industry for nearly 20 years, and obviously I've seen a lot of change happening. One of the things that we were very interested in was understanding the changing nature of customer service and getting involved with Mike and his team to really put a different perspective to understand with everything that we hear about around technology, what is the true role of the advisor going to be in the future, and how does that relate and how is that relevant to us as an organisation. So I'm going to take you through a few slides just giving our perspective of that thinking from a Kura view and what we are doing about it. So as a business, we've been, like I say, an outsourced customer management provider and of software solutions. We have been in existence for over 20 years. We have 4 sites across the UK with 1,800 people. We are quite uniquely placed, I would say. We have a software business as part of our group, which designs and sells software solutions such as unified agent desktops and self-serve technology. Our advisors act as the inspiration to our software products. At the end of the day, those are the guys who are going to use it. So it's, getting their input is absolutely valuable. But I always say that's what we do. That's quite interesting. But why we do what we do is our whole thing. Why we're in business is the whole fulcrum for us. At Kura, we think very differently. I like. See, I've been in business for 20 years. My team around me, our CEO Brian and our People and Culture Director Julie McIntosh, in our collective view, businesses are not really interested in developing people, and that's come from born of different industries, different businesses, and our collective experience. A lot of businesses have a lot of people and have big people processes, but they don't tend to build their businesses around people. People are a means to get stuff done. Now, don't get me wrong, getting stuff done is important. We all need to get stuff done. But businesses, we don't spend enough time with our people, understanding them as individuals, understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are, helping them to build their self-belief. That means people never reach their full potential. There's always a lack of transparency to how people are performing or how their behaviours might affect or hold them back from the job they do. So at Kura, we have a phrase that goes around that we say that the thinking of people around doing things and stuff to actually focusing on people as individuals and behaviour. We think that's a mental mindset shift that people are needed, and we call that crossing the bridge, because I think it is a bit of a mental bridge you need to cross to ensure that you harness the full potential of your people. You focus on them as individuals. Our vision as a business is to be unrivaled in developing people one day. Now, that's a hugely aspirational vision, but something that excites us and inspires us every day. Now, if you think about that for a second, if we're to be the best when it comes to developing people in the future, it's absolutely critical that we understand what the changing nature of work will be in the future that will affect our people in the contact center. So one of the the underlying reasons why we reached out to commission this white paper. Now, some of our clients there, like I say, we've been existing for over 20 years, and we work across a number of different sectors where we deliver contact center and software solutions. Our software products, the Unified Agent Desktop, currently has 15,000 desktops worldwide, used by many different organizations around the world today. Now, I just want to touch on what we call the Kura Way. We like to say that a different way of doing things. Now, we know with the changing nature of work that's coming through, the role of the advisor will need to change. I think Mike touched on it earlier on, and it's also clearly documented in the white paper. Now, I don't think that will happen by itself unless leadership is shown in this instance. And it's very interesting that through the polls that everybody is engaged and understanding that they have to be active, thinking how that change will come about. At Kura, we want advisors who are actively engaged in the service they deliver, looking at ways to improve the job that they do. So we've already started this process of redefining the role of advisor, no longer to be come into work, put your headset on, check your brain at the door and get on with the job. We want advisors to be empowered in improving not only their own job, but also looking at ways to improve the journey from end to end, from a customer to be wholly immersed in the service they deliver. We're going a step further. We're asking advisors to give direct feedback and input into our software team to ensure that we're building our products such as agent desktops from the advisor's perspective, making it easy for them to use by making it easy for our people to use it. it will help our customers because ultimately the advisor is then focusing on the conversation with the customer rather than having to navigate their way through tricky and clunky systems. The amount of times I've seen in business where management think put in a new piece of technology and it's all working, and you go down to front line and sit there and you see the amount of workarounds that are having to happen because the systems are not just catered for the person who's using them. So having a different way of looking at that is very key for us in terms of making sure we're making that experience for the customer and then the advisor much better. We joined up with our software team and we not only took solutions from the more kind of prevalent that we hear about voice of the customer, where you marry up the call type to the customer's view, but we're going a step further there and introducing what we call the voice of the advisor through our Scintillate Agent desktop, where are people giving us real-time feedback on how they felt on the call. So not only customers giving us feedback, but we want our people to give us feedback on how they felt. Did they feel out their depth? Was the call too easy? Was it just about right? And this will give us great insight into understanding processes, but also training needs, and giving us an understanding if something's too easy, actually, are we missing a trick here? Can we automate that process? Or does the person need a bit more training because they're feeling out their depth? So we think that will be a very powerful tool in terms of marrying up the whole experience from end to end for our customer. In the white paper, there is a section called Shared Independence. Now, I think it says that where advisors will be encouraged to take responsibility and make decisions on behalf of business, and I think that's critical going forward. One of our values at Kura is accountability. It's always knowing it's always down to me. Now, we want our people to be empowered in the job that they do, be fully supported, and help them develop as individuals. We want our people to meet their commitments. So giving them the opportunity to take control and make some of these decisions. Now, an example of this we have, and it's similar to the Pret example to a degree, but we have what we call a tool called Ask Brian, Brian being our CEO. It's a direct link between every employee and the CEO. Anyone can send Brian a direct message, and Brian receives it, but it's also posted publicly on our intranet. Brian has an SLA to get back to everybody, which he does personally, and it's also, once again, it goes back to the person. It's posted on our intranet. I think we're now 1,000 plus Ask Brians and counting, and believe you me when I say we've seen from the weird to the wonderful in terms of questions and requests. A few that I pick up, as we know, we're up in Glasgow. It's a hot day today. Brian, can we get some ice cream? And trust me, if you've been the north of the border, when we do have a hot day, we really need to take advantage of it. So we have some of those more jovial things, and to some extent, we've had core businesses processes being re-engineered, where quite people have asked, advisors have asked, this process doesn't seem to be working. Why is that, Brian? And we've gone and re-engineered the processes. So we see that as an example where it's the essence of people taking responsibility, but it's also a reflection of the culture that we're building in our business, having that connection to all our people. We know our results, we know our way of working is different from other organizations. We know, but we need to harness this differently, and that's starting to bear some results. Now, I've given an example there that when you bring all these things together, when you have advisors who are empathetic problem solvers, handling complex interactions like we do for our client turn to us. Incidentally, they are one of the UK's leading charities helping people in financial hardship. Just an example, last year alone, they handed out over £130 million in grants. They also have a benefit calculator tool that enables people to identify if they are entitled to benefits where they're not claiming. I think there's billions of pounds every year going by where these are not being claimed. But as a charity, they're always challenged with the budget they have and how much they can spend. Kura and Anysoft, we both deliver a multi-channel contact center service for them. And last year, they were looking to access more of their callers, but in a more digital manner. So we introduced a web chat service through the help of our Anysoft colleagues, and as part of our Scintillate Connect unified desktop. Now, our advisors use and access the web chat alongside other channels, inbound, outbound, SMS, all seamlessly, all off the same interface, including the client system and their online benefit check. No toggling needed, no geo screens. And you can imagine the type of conversation that people are having. People are in vulnerable circumstances, needing to have confidential conversations. So giving the advisor the ability to have that conversation without needing to focus on all these different disparate systems has been critical. And those are some of the results that we've seen since we've introduced it in the last 5 months. We've seen over 1,000 chats per month, and this is a service that handles 5,500 calls per month, so a significant amount of people now using the web chat service. We've seen a reduction in calls. We've helped some of the people channel shift as a result of having the ability to have the web chat service. And obviously the endorsement from our callers, feeling that they're being dealt in a sensitive and supporting way. I think that's been critical for us, enabling the advisor to listen, but also take control and get an outcome for each of our callers. Now, I think Mike mentioned earlier on, and the white paper also references that the skills needed for the future are going to be different from what we have today. The changing nature of customer service, the changing nature of the queries and the requirements, and the kind of bringing on of automation and technology all culminates in actually have we got people with the right skills. So we know, in my personal opinion, you know, our traditional approach to training is no longer going to work. The kind of sheep dip approach to training needs a complete rethink, and it needs investment. You know, we're investing in systems, we're investing in technologies, but also we need to think about investing in people. We need to ensure that they're equipped with the right skills and they have the right tools in giving them the best chance to be successful. I always find that this is a difficult one to land, because I think it's easier sometimes to describe the technology that you are delivering, the benefits it might give you, or the automation it might result in. It's harder to quantify the quantitative benefit of additional investment in training. We did a survey and piece of research with the CCA last year, and there were a number of things that came out of that about the key skills needed for people in the future, and there was a whole raft and list of them. Interestingly, in the same paper, the same people said that only 5% of them thought they needed additional investment in training. So for me, the two things don't work. If we believe that there are skills that are needed, then but we don't believe we need investment in training, I always think we sell as an industry, we sell ourselves short when it comes to training. Like I say, I talked about the research there with the CCA, just to give you a couple of interactions, some stats around that. In that actual research, it noted that 42% of organisations are now focused on handling complex interactions, and it's borne out with some of the poll data we've seen today here as well, which is actually higher. The same research also said that what skills advisors would need in the future, over 60% said empathy, emotional intelligence, and problem-solving skills will be needed to handle complex interactions. So the days of having what I used to call the cardigan type advisor, where they're being a listening ear, quite passive, sympathising with the caller, those days are coming close to an end. What customers will want and need to have is the controlling advisor, so takes control, takes charge, shows empathy, but gets the customer's issue resolved, making it easier for them, not needing to repeat themselves, not needing to endure lots of effort in getting that done. So that, if any of you have ever watched Thomas the Tank Engine, I've got young children, you'll know who the Fat Controller is. One of the other key skills from that paper was the omnichannel skills. So 74% of people telling that they needed omnichannel skills around be able to handle multiple interactions across different interactions. That needs to be done in a seamless way, and it's critical that we enable that by having the right tools, but also provide the people with the right skills. Mike talked there earlier about the blending and automation with people. As an organisation at Kura, and personally, I can't wait for automation and robotics and AI to come into contact centres, because I think there's so much opportunity to remove a lot of the transactional activity and the routine, which will leave the more complex and interesting work, because I think that's where the real value is, and that's the business that we are building. So we can't wait for that to come. The thing we have to always watch is getting the right mix and the right blend, and we have the right skills to support our people around that. So we don't over-engineer it, and we don't actually leave it such a way that our people are having to make workarounds to make it work. I talked at the start of this that we need to rethink training. At Kura, we have started rethinking training. I'll give you an example. One of our clients, we worked collaboratively over last year looking at a root and branch review of the induction program. It was a 3-week training program, sitting in a classroom, listening to a trainer, going through numerous amount of slides before they got out on the operational floor to take the first call. We took that and restarted. We built a very interactive experience where people learn in bite-sized chunks, and they get out on the floor and practice what they've learned. And this practice and learn, practice and learn, and learn and practice kind of approach has paid dividends for us. The attainment to competence for our people going through this program has reduced by 50% the time taken to them, being business as usual performance levels, and the retention the first 19 days improved by 30%. We all know that that's your Achilles heel in contact centres. They're taking the first call, or the early life of the advisor's journey is always the most critical part, and if we can enhance that makes a significant improvement of their ability to stay for a longer time. So we know we need to re-engineer training, and we've already started, but I think this is the things that need to be done going forward. And finally, just to summarise, there were 7 steps that the paper outlined about the things that we need to adapt to changing the nature of customer service work. We need to recognise contact centre work is changing, and I think the polls today very much recognise that there's a case. So first of all, we need to recognise it's happening. We need to focus on the interactions that matter, the ones that drive value, as Mike alluded to earlier. I think these inevitably will be complex in nature. We need to make sure that we give our people the right skills, and we are ensuring that they are both being pulled and pushed. So we are providing the right skills to them, but they have the ability to, as Mike said earlier, to pull on those skills when they need them. We need to find the right technology. Technology will hugely help us in the contact centre, but we want to make sure it's helping our advisors as well. So we need to make sure that it helps both. We need to make sure that the pay structures are reflective of the change that is coming. I honestly think that one day we'll see the £50,000 advisor. They'll be what I call a knowledge and a process expert, a technician of sorts, harnessing AI, robotic technologies to solve customer issues. So I believe that will come one day. And I think obviously there's a lot of people doing a lot of great stuff out there, so you don't need to do this all alone. Finding the right partner is absolutely critical to helping you on this journey. Outsourcing is one way to do this. My personal opinion is sometimes outsourcers have tended to build transactional capability and not being able to articulate the value they can deliver, so that needs to change. And finally, leadership in the contact centre. Contact centres are a vital part of the business. Leadership needs to be shown here. We need to enable their voices to be heard and have the narrative in the boardrooms. And as leaders, we need to facilitate and lead the change that's coming rather than waiting it to happen. And that was me. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to you, John, now.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Arceeb. Thank you very much to Mike for the for the presentations of both your white paper and some great insight, Arceeb, into how you are putting into action some of the changes that need to be made as we move from the voice-only world of the past to the omni-channel world of the present and the future. So really, really interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a few minutes left. So if you've got any questions, put them on the question function of your control panel, and we're going to answer as many as we can now in the next few minutes. But don't worry, Arceeb or Mike will get back to you directly if we don't address your question in the time. So really a question which actually covers quite a few people's questions. So I'll sort of bring it all together in an envelope or an umbrella, and that is: can you guys see a time when all customer service will be managed digitally? And do you think this is realistic? So I don't know who wants to take that first, but over to you guys.
Shall I step in first? I think there is this notion that's often been talked around, which is, firstly, the best service is no service, and I think that's a slightly different take on that question of, can everything be managed in a digital context? I think the important issue here is, do we want that? I mean, because certainly any organization right now could turn off its call center and just insist that there is a digital only route. In fact, there are some companies that have tried that. And if you go back to the customer value demand model that I alluded to, there is absolutely a portion of demand that I think will forever be there, which is of significant and potential value that we want to have the conversation and the customer will want to have it. And so actually, we need to be taking a considered view of this rather than being led by the technology and what's on offer. So I think that of course, everything could be managed digitally. That could happen right now, but we definitely don't want that to happen, because there is inherent value, whether it's sales, upselling, cross-selling, or whether it's brand and reputation and advocacy, that is really important to have the right type of conversation with those customers and look after them in the right way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mike, there. I think tomorrow we could, as organisations, switch off the contact call centre and push everybody to an online channel. I think the value question is important, as you say, but also we need to make sure that for organisations, that they need to be inclusive for their customer base, who are varied in nature, from the demographics that they need to deal with, from vulnerable people right through to the millennials, and we need to give people the choice of the contact channel they want to use. So some people will continue to use voice as their primary channel, and likewise some others will never want to ever use it at all. The key here is giving customers the choice, rather than saying that it will never need to be managed otherwise other than digital.
And just to conclude, sorry, John, it's why I deliberately focused on this question of value at the beginning of the presentation, because a board will make that decision to push everything digitally if the only argument they've got is one of cost. Because clearly, there are cost advantages in taking the headcount of a service environment away and putting things into digital channels. That is ignoring the value side of that equation, and it's been ignored enough historically. We can't continue to keep ignoring it. We have to focus on the value side to ensure we get the right investment to do the right thing. And that, I think, certainly for the foreseeable future, involves real people answering real customers' problems and needs.
Mike, you mentioned there sort of the mindset of the senior leadership in terms of that balancing between cost and other values that can be extracted from a live human to human conversation. So how do we need to sort of perhaps convince the leadership that there is still value in that human to human voice conversation?
So great question, John, and if that's relayed from someone in the audience, then yeah, a very good question. I think there's probably three components that I'll talk about very quickly. One is, and I've alluded to it earlier, we have to speak the language of the boardroom. No board director, no individual would set out to say, I don't value customers, I don't want to do the right thing for them. It's just they're not being given the right arguments. We've got to speak the language of the boardroom. Secondly is we've got to turn that into hard commercial terms. So, when we talk about ESAT and CSAT or MPS, what do we really mean in terms of P&L or balance sheet or risk or competitive advantage and sustainability? We have to adapt our operational language to the language that suits them. And the final piece I would say is, don't forget that they're human too. So let's make it emotional, right? I've seen people play one phone call of a disastrous customer interaction that the customer's been left in tears or agitated or angry, and that one phone call has had more of an impact than a business case, with significant and quick returns on it. So play to the emotion, hit them with hard numbers, and make sure that we're speaking their language around what value really means.
Good stuff. Right. Well, unfortunately, time has beaten us. As always, we could always go on a lot longer than the session allows. So it's really down for me just in the last few seconds to thank our expert presenters for today for their very, very insightful presentations and answering some of your questions. So to Arceeb and to Mike, thank you very much indeed. Very, very big thank you to Kura for your ongoing support of our knowledge share initiatives here at Directors Club United Kingdom, in particular this webinar. And if you wish to find out more about Kura, go to wearekura.com, and there you can find more information about their market-leading solutions. But as always, webinars are nothing without their audience. So thanks finally to you for taking some time out of your day to attend this webinar. If you're watching the rebroadcast, if you're watching the video, thank you also for taking some time out of your day, and feel free to forward the link to the video to colleagues and connections within your industry. I hope to have your company again very soon at another Directors Club event. Visit directorsclub.org.uk for future event information. So until next time, my name's John Snow, and this has been a Directors Club United Kingdom presentation.